Welcome to day 8 of 20 Days of Learning with Illustrator. Let's learn about brushes. Brushes are predefined styles applied to your path. This is a little easier to explain with my examples here. Notice I have a few different pieces of artwork. Some of them look a little more complex. If we look at this particular banner, we've got a whole bunch of speckles. We look at this artwork, I've got a whole bunch of little leaves and a bunch of little details in my exclamation point icon right here. However, if I jump into what's called outline mode by hitting Control Y, this shows me the actual paths of my artwork. And you can see that everything here is really quite simple. With my banner down here, I have a few strokes, I've got some outline shapes like this. My exclamation points are actually exactly the same as far as the left and the right one. My border pattern on this card is really simple, just a corner, and the arrow icon on the left here is just two paths. Really pretty simple stuff. But when I jump out of outline mode, you can see all the artwork comes to life. This is possible through brushes. Let's go look at how they're applied. Brushes can be applied to any path that you create in Illustrator. Maybe you use the pen tool to draw, or the shape tool, or the pencil tool. Regardless of the tool that you use, as long as you've built a path, you can apply brushes to those paths. Applying a brush is really easy, but first you have to make sure you have access to the brushes panel. I've got it over here on the right. If you don't see yours, you can come up to Window and select Brushes right here. To apply a brush, just select the path and then apply whatever brush you want to apply. Let's apply a few different brushes so that you can see the difference of how these brushes may be applied to the individual paths. Something you should know about brushes is when you apply them to a path, they'll apply differently depending on the type of brush you're working with. In Illustrator, there are 5 different types of brushes. We won't go into the detail of how these different brushes work. You may just want to play around a little bit or do a little research online. With most brushes, depending on the type of brush you use, the artwork is going to be stretched across the path. In other words, as I stretch my path along, that artwork will just be stretched further and further. So depending on the length of my path, it may look different. I can also adjust the look of my brush by using many of the stroke properties, like width or even the color. If I change this to pink, you'll notice that my brush stroke then changes color. Because the artwork of a brush is applied across an entire path, when you're drawing a brush stroke, you may want to draw using smaller segments rather than one big long segment. For example, I'll draw one really long and curvy path, then I'll draw a very similar path broken into individual segments. Let's select all of those paths and apply a brush stroke. You can see how even though the form of the path is similar, the brush strokes look really different. How dramatic the difference is may depend on the type of brush stroke you're using. For example, when I apply this scatter brush, you can see a huge difference in the way the brush looks. You can also create your own brushes using your own artwork. If I grab these 2 little characters here, throw them into my brushes area and select pattern brush, hit OK. I'm not going to change any of these options. We'll keep it simple for today. Hit OK. Now if I select my circle shape, apply my newly created pattern brush, I'm going to get a pattern of the artwork that I previously created. Keep in mind that this is only a small sample of what you can do with your own custom brushes. Finally, something I do with a lot of the artwork when I use brushes is I will expand the artwork. What this means is I can convert this path into artwork by coming up to Object, select Expand Appearance. Now my path has been converted into various shapes and I can actually modify the shapes independent of the original path. The only warning I have is once you've expanded your artwork, you can't necessarily turn it back into your path with the exception of using the undo. That's all I have to say with brushes. Hopefully you found something you can use. Have a fantastic day and we'll see you tomorrow.